It didn't force me to be confident. It forced me to finish. I was done. I never went back. I never did another line. I never, the ADD and dyslexia doesn't allow me to really sleep.
Welcome to this episode of the Confidence Quotient podcast. Really excited for the guest that we have in today. I'm your host, Michael Carrillo, with co-host Zane Kaufman.
How we doing?
And the guy that we have in today, Zane, he's done a lot of stuff. He's done a lot of stuff, from being an athlete to now a business owner, big-time business owner. He's conquered a lot, from a violent upbringing, dyslexia, ADD, overcoming lost scholarships, addiction. He embraced a football mindset in work, now owns a multi-million-dollar medical company, and also flips properties. Resilience turned a lot of those obstacles into opportunities, and probably the biggest obstacle he had to overcome was coaching me and Zane in high school.
100%.
So, welcome to the show, Mike Biggs. We're really excited to have you on here, man. Yeah.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I'm excited to help you guys along on your project.
Yeah.
It wasn't that hard coaching you two.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's good.
There were other kids that were tougher, and the coaches.
Yeah. Oh, I bet. Well, listen, Coach. I don't know. I feel weird calling him Mike. I still feel like I should call him Coach. But
whatever feels good.
We know a lot about your story and the things that you've been able to do. We'll dive into where you're at now and the big time things that you're doing. But as you kind of maybe take a look back and take a step back at what you're doing right now, is this kind of the life that you envisioned when you were a little kid?
No. I imagined that, I was going to be a pro football player.
Yeah.
That's what my identity was. And life threw me for a bunch of different loops and just pick yourself up. And I ended up here.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll get into some of the
path. Let's talk about that path. Growing up, I know it wasn't necessarily a smooth walk down the park for you. Tell us a little bit about what that was like.
Well, my parents got pregnant when they were in high school.
Yeah.
They went to Grossmont. I don't hold a lot of that against them, but considering I went to Helix.
Yeah.
But they were high school kids. They didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah.
And, I'm glad they had me. And it was a struggle for them because there was violence in the house and didn't know how to raise a child at 18. I mean, as some of us know, Zane, it's even tough as you get older.
Even at 27, it's tough.
Yeah, even at almost 59, it's tough. So I think that was the hard part for them. And then there was 3 kids, and my dad had violence in his house, so he brought that on to this house. And I had to learn, basically how to survive and read the room. Read if it was a tough day, a hard day. I did this, he reacted this way. And that was the hardest thing early on. And I don't know, should I pause here?
No, I mean, there's obviously, I feel like we've known you for 12, 13 years at this point.
Yeah.
And I think you've always had such a calm demeanor, even in games, right? Like we were talking about this, but in the heat of the moment, there was never any sense of you being frazzled or you being uneasy.
No, very collected.
Very calm. And I think part of that is you grew up in a very turbulent household. And obviously talking about confidence here today, what were some of those things that maybe as you were growing up, was confidence something that you felt like you always had, or was that something that you had to develop?
I had to develop it. I think it started with first being able to survive and learn skills, how to avoid conflict. But then, I was the oldest of 3, and I would have to step in between. My dad was 6'6", and when he got mad, he towered over me. So
yeah,
I would cut in front of him, in front of my mom when they were fighting and my siblings. And it got to the point where I felt like he wasn't going to break me. And that kind of gave me the confidence, but probably blind, confidence that I could survive anything. And then as I went on in life, that's the only thing I knew too.
Yeah. And
So
you had to be a tough guy growing up.
For sure.
I had to. And plus, when I saw a bully, it triggered me. So be in third grade, a sixth grader starts bullying me and my cousin, and I'm standing between a 6'6" guy. I just took on the sixth grader.
Yeah.
I remember one time this guy was flicking my cousin, and I went to throw a punch at him. He was in sixth grade, I was in third, and he caught my hand. Well, I happened to have my little metal Superman lunchbox. So when I hit him with that, nobody bothered me that year.
Yeah.
For the rest of the year. They thought the third grader was crazy, which I probably was.
Were you big? Were you a big third grader?
I was pretty big, but not as big as this sixth grader, mentally not big enough. But I'm like, you don't scare me. I deal with something much bigger. So as those interactions happened, I became more confident, in my ability to be able to handle myself.
So did football become an outlet for you then?
It did. And it took a while. And, every year I moved in elementary school. So every year I had to make new friends. So it became easier and easier just to walk up and say, hey, what's going on? Can we be friends? Every year. And then fifth grade, I decided I wanted to play football. Because I was so big, I played 3 divisions up.
Wow.
Oh, geez.
And these guys tore me up. And, I don't know where you guys want to go on this. You guys lead this. But my dad would drop me off, and these guys would just tee off on me. I didn't know how to hit. I was hesitant. So he'd drop me off, and I'd go across the street to the school and play with these kids and pour water on my head like I worked out. He'd come back and pick me up. And
So you were skipping practice.
So one day the coach called my dad and said, how come Mike's not at practice? He goes, what do you mean? I drop him off every day. And this was a moment that my stepdad now, who was, a godsend to the family, Lou, came in, and he just said, you finish what you start. So I'm coming every day. I'm changing my work schedule, and I'm going to make you finish.
Yeah.
And I mean, I hated him for it because these guys were teeing off on me every day. And since I finished, I came back the next year, and I'm a two-way starter, and I'm not afraid anymore, and I'm bigger. And all those things that felt like obstacles and felt like God and everybody was against me turned out to be positives in my life because I overcame those things, and it gave me more confidence.
What flipped that switch for you, you think? What was it, your stepdad forcing you to say, there's no way out of this? You got to show up to football practice. Does that force you to just be confident?
It didn't force me to be confident. It forced me to finish. And then it taught me that not to have any quit. And it's one of the things I've lived by. Like if I say I'm going to do something, whether I meet here with you two good-looking guys or not, I'm going to be here.
Yeah.
And it taught me that. And it's something that I taught the kids. Like if you're going to do this and you say yes, we're finishing it. Do you understand? There's no quit. And I think that helped me in football. Once I got good at it, then I became Mike Biggs, the football player.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you
No,
go ahead. No, I was going to say, and you guys understand that.
Sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you get so wrapped up in that identity, especially going into high school. I mean,
Such formative years for you.
oh yeah, and that's what you do. You play football, and that's who you are. And I really want to get into this, especially for you. You're kind of you get into high school, you're kind of the man, right? I mean, take us through your high school years once you get into there.
Well, I was playing with some pretty good guys at Helix.
Yeah, tell us. I mean, obviously, people that don't know, Helix is a big-time football program here in San Diego, and that's where Reggie Bush went. That's where Alex Smith went. But you can go back for decades, and there's always been really prominent guys that have come out of there. Who are some of the guys that you played with?
I played with Jim Plum, who was an All-American, Scott Webb, who's an All-American, Chuck Cecil played for the Packers and the Cardinals. He coaches right now at Arizona. Leon White played for the Bengals and the Rams. Just an amazing guy. Casey Tumalu, Mountain West player, an all-WAC guy.
Yeah.
So these guys were legit.
Dudes.
Legit. Carl Jarrell, Alan Durden.
Yeah.
Carl Jarrell was the head coach at UCLA. Yeah, these guys were good.
Yeah.
And I had to learn to play up at their level.
Yeah.
So it taught me a lot. So at first on JV, I was pretty good.
Yeah.
I got MVP, and I thought that I could play with the varsity guys. So when they brought me up during the playoffs, we had an old linebacker coach who was just an amazing guy. And I was like, I want to hit these guys. He'll, no, you don't. I'm like, yeah, I do. I got confidence.
Yeah.
And he's like, all right, I've had enough of you bugging me, bull in the ring. And man, these guys could hit. So I knew what I needed to learn. I have a buddy named Jack Rowell who was so mad at me that I bugged the coach because he put him in the middle, and Jack was looking out his ear hole, calling me every name in the book. But that was my sophomore year, and it taught me. So when I went up to varsity my junior year, we were loaded.
Yeah.
Like we had the number one offense and All-American at quarterback and Jarrell and all those guys. And only me and one other guys were the two starting juniors. It was all seniors and two juniors. And we made it all the way to the stadium. So I got a lot of confidence, playing at that level. And then my senior year, we had Chuck.
Yeah.
And we had lost everybody, and we weren't predicted to win, and we ended up winning. We lost my junior year in the stadium. I know Hammersmith played for us. That guy's a stud.
Yeah.
Hammer got hurt. And
yeah.
These guys were just monsters.
Yeah. I mean, but you were holding your own in that world. And, I mean, your junior year, you had pretty much every offer that you could have wanted.
I did have a lot of offers.
Yeah.
And then the wheels started to come off.
Yeah, what happened next?
So, I had this girlfriend, and it kind of triggered me when we broke up that it just reminded me of the people that are supposed to love you are going to hurt you, because that's what I learned at a young age. And then I started chasing girls and partying to fill that hole that, reopened again that I didn't realize that I had. And fighting and, smoking weed and doing drugs and just being crazy.
Yeah.
And not going to class. So going into my senior year, I had gotten in a fight at the X Fest, which was at the stadium. And I was fighting this guy, and someone grabbed me from behind, and I thought it was one of this guy's friends, and I actually turned and it was a cop. So now I'm a felon for a moment.
Yeah.
And
so you just swung on him?
I just swung. I just turned and swung. And
sounds like you connected too.
I didn't miss. They gave it to me, though, with the belly clubs. I'll tell you that much.
I bet.
Yeah. But then the cop admitted that he didn't really think that I knew it was him. We weren't facing each other, and it got pleaded down to a misdemeanor. But by then I was at Grossmont College because nobody was going to take me. Plus, I graduated from Helix with straight D's. I think they just wanted to get me out. Like, hey, we'll just get this guy out of here. And then, I ended up getting hurt at Grossmont.
Yeah. So, I mean, walk us through. I mean, your confidence, your junior year, your senior year, you're playing in these big-time games with big-time teammates. You're overcoming a lot of things. Confidence, you're the guy. We've all been there at playing at a high level at 17, 18 years old. And very quickly, things start to unravel for you. Yes. Where was your head at when things started to unravel for you?
I didn't realize they were unraveling. I still had the confidence, probably some arrogance at the time because I was pretty good. And I didn't realize that I was starting to spin a little bit out of control. Mm-hmm. And some of my coaches at Grossmont.
Yeah.
And, I'm sure they told you I was a handful. And I was playing with like Tololo and Tuise and all the Samoan guys. And I was kind of the ringleader of trouble, I think, at that time. But after back surgery, the phone stopped ringing. And I think that's when the depression set in that you guys know, as I coached you when you came off the field, the fans, the parents were like, man, you had an amazing game. What a hit.
Yeah.
Great interception, great pass. And that was over.
Yeah.
And I still remember, and I think at some other time I had told you guys this, that I could read people because I had to read if it was safe or not. So this guy came up to me and was like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm working construction. And he kind of looked at me, and I could see the disappointment. Like, that's what I do. Like, I expected more of you. And I just continued to kind of fake it, you know, around everybody else. Like, everything was cool. Everything was great. I'm still the man. But I wasn't. I was starting to do meth and do drugs and spin out of control.
At what point, I know faith is a big part of your life.
Yes.
At what point did faith start to come into your life?
So it's kind of a funny situation now that I'm coming up on 59. I was raised Catholic, went to Our Lady of Grace, went to catechism, and I totally turned my back on God because when my mom left my dad, because it just got so bad at the house, we were sitting in church and they said, hey, let's go up and do communion. And my mom started crying. She said, I can't, I'm divorced. And my mom was crying, so I got mad at the church that my mom left this unhealthy relationship, and she was being punished for that, for protecting us. So I walked away, and it took me years before I got back. And I don't know if you want to talk a little bit in the middle, and then I'll get to that part where God sent me the right person. Yeah. So I don't know where you want to go with that.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's talk about that, because obviously, you know, going from, just from a worldly point of view, a secular point of view, being the man, I mean, that's something that a lot of people want to be, is within themselves. They want to be able to look in the mirror and say they've got the confidence to want to go and do anything. And a lot of that is motivated by external things, external validation.
Yep.
And so when all of that is stripped away from you, like it was for you, and you're taking that hard look in the mirror, and you have actually another external motivator, like a person coming to you that knew you from your past when you were the man, coming to say to you, hey, you're not the man anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, where is faith in that moment? Where are these things that are where you are now and all the character that you have now? Like, where are those things starting to root out of you then?
So by the time that person walked up to me at Best Buy and said, oh my God, you look like crap.
Yeah.
I was already 2.5 years. I had a gram a day habit. And she called me out and just said, I used to look up to you. She was 2 years below me, and she just called me out, like right in the grocery store, you look like crap. And I went home that day and I quit. And I called up a buddy, a guy named Brad Travis. Kudos to Brad. Another Grossmont guy. Can't hold that against him. And I said, hey, bro, I need help. My car doesn't work. I don't have a job. I'm on my last dime. And he just said, you done tweaking, dude? And I said, I am. So I slept for 3 days. And he picked me up on Monday, bought me a membership at Gold's Gym, and put me to work.
Was that hard for you to ask for help?
No, because after that look in the mirror, after that girl called me out, I was done. I never went back. I never did another line. And, you know, when you read stories about meth and heroin, like.
Yeah, I mean, that's not.
People just don't
do
quit.
that cold turkey. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know if you want to say confidence or arrogance or stubbornness, but that day changed me and I quit. And then I started my path and I started, you know, working construction, and then I became an electrician. And then my back flared up again from, you know, doing all the roping and boxing and construction. And basically they said, you can't do this job anymore. And that's when I decided to go into the medical field. And the medical field, and I'll get to the God part in a minute.
Yeah.
God's always been there.
Oh, yeah.
Always. I just wasn't paying attention. And I got in the medical field, and right then I was making $8.50 an hour, going from $22 an hour. I had 2 kids, and I was going through a divorce.
And how old are you at this point?
I'm like 27.
Yeah.
Wow. It's our age right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Young kids. And I didn't know that my ex, she was doing crazy stuff, but we were both doing drugs together. So I didn't know if she was sneaking and doing drugs or not. But she was just doing weird stuff, putting the dishes in the dryer, and she'd get violent and throw stuff at me and just screaming and crazy. And I thought it was the drugs. And, you know, we went to counseling, and finally we got divorced. And it was probably like 3 years later that I found out that she had a brain disorder called cerebellum ataxia. And once I found out, it's like Huntington's disease. Balance, speech, plus they have the dementia gene. As soon as that happened, I knew my daughter had it too. So then I met Kelly, my wife, who's just a godsend.
Yeah.
And just to tell you, God was always there. I just wasn't paying attention. I was 28, starting a new job at $8.50, 2 kids, and I had baggage. I was 28, she was 20. I don't know what she saw in me, but she was instantly, at 20 years old, the mom to those kids. She adopted them. We got custody of them. She was even the one taking my ex-wife to her doctor's appointments.
Wow.
And she's the one that told the doctor, you need to test her. And the doctor tested her and found out that she had that disease.
How'd you and Kelly meet?
We were in medicine. So I'm just saying, you look back and you say, all these doors were open. I just wasn't paying attention. She started in that company that I started in just a couple months after me. And will be 28 years of marriage.
Wow. Congratulations.
In February. Yeah, still don't know what she sees, but
Well,
she said potential.
Yeah.
So I got to imagine you're coming out, going to the medical field. You're only, at this point, you meet Kelly, let's say, maybe a year or two sober.
Yeah.
How has Kelly changed you as a man and what you were doing? Like, what has she done for you in that regard?
Unbelievable. She's just pure love every day with anybody in our life, and just supported me in everything I wanted to do. She supported me. And by taking in my kids, like what 20-year-old wants 2 kids and a guy that's living in a buddy's mom's 1-bedroom house, driving an old Pontiac Firebird, like with an 8-track player in it, which you guys probably don't even know what that is. But she was there for me. And almost at the God part now is that I started my first PT company, and I was working for this doctor, and I won't say his name, but I love the guy. He's still one of my best friends. And Kelly and I were getting ready to have our first kid, Aaron, which you guys know well.
Very well. Great kid, by the way.
He is a great kid. And, you know, at that time, Kyle was in rehab, following Dad's old footsteps. My daughter has the brain disorder. Aaron gets type 1 diabetes at 8 years old. And it just never felt like I was overwhelmed, but a lot of that had to do with Kelly and the support and the things I'd been through in life. And when I was talking to this doctor and I said, hey, I have this opportunity to open up a PT clinic with this guy, and I need a day off a week. And the guy looked at me and he was like, you know, with your education, $50,000 a year is a lot of money. And I don't know what my face looked like, but it must not have been perfect. And he goes, no, I'll give you a raise, you know. You've helped build my practice. And I just said, look, dude, I don't blame you. You know, you went to USC, Cambridge, Yale, top of your class. Like the way you look at life is the college education amounts to, you know, to an income. And you're never going to respect me for that is. So I actually bet him that I'd finally make 6 figures, and I quit that day. But I stayed 6 months until I found a replacement. But I started the PT company, and we just blew up. And I still...
Yeah, well, I want to hear about that, but I'm just, you know, you're talking about going from 27, 28 years old, making $8.50 an hour, to now we're talking about growing and scaling companies. I mean, where was some of those? Was that Kelly starting to speak life into you? I mean, where did you start to get the audacity to just say, hey, I'm going from $8.50 an hour to no, I can actually run these companies?
So, you know, the ADD and dyslexia doesn't allow me to really sleep. And I just think of things differently than other people. My mind's wired differently. The ADD, I was on Ritalin as a kid, the dyslexia, all those things were held against me by even kids and teachers. Like, you can't spell. Like, I was terrified when they'd ask me to go write up, go write on the chalkboard. I'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get laughed at. And, but I look at things differently. And as we started to grow, I started seeing these angles. Oh, if we open here and we open there, and I know this doc, and if we do this. And I had two partners, a guy named Steve and Richie. Richie was a therapist. Steve was another marketer, talented guys. And we got up to 12 clinics. We were grossing $13 million with a $9 million overhead. And I was just like, this is it. Man, I made it. Well, Arnold passed the Workers' Comp Reform Act, and we had all our eggs in work comp. I was out of business in a year.
Wow.
We went from 12, 13 million to 4.5 with a 9 overhead. And this is the God part, is that I asked my staff, I said, hey, we're not going to make it. You guys need to go find jobs. I'm going to find someone to help me unwind the company. So I asked them to interview some people, and they had 4 interviews. This is a little funny story. Like, on a rainy day in San Diego, only one of the persons showed up, and it was this girl. And I came back the next day, and I was like, how'd the interviews go? They go, only one person showed up. Everybody canceled because of the rain. I'm like, it wasn't like snow or anything.
Yeah.
And they were kind of acting a little weird around me. And I was like, why are you guys acting weird? Like, does she speak Spanish? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, well, why are you acting weird? She goes, we go out and we market and we party with the docs, and she's married to a pastor. And I'm like, so, like, bring her in. So I sat down with this lady. I don't know, do you guys know Josh Hotzenpiller?
Can't say that I do.
No.
Yeah, he's this short, little, cocky pastor and started a couple churches, and now he does a church up in Rancho Bernardo.
Okay.
I cannot remember the name right now, but we're sitting there. Go ahead.
Well, so you're interviewing his wife to come in to essentially kind of help you unwind your company.
Correct.
You're bleeding out. You're
Yeah.
like, we need an exit.
Yeah, and I said, I'll hire you for a year to help me unwind it, billing, collections, HR, everything. So sweetest lady comes in, and she would just very subtly say, oh, I'm singing this Sunday at church. You should come. And I'd be like, yeah, I'll think about it, And finally I met her husband. This part might be a little entertaining or unentertaining. We might have to cut this part, but we were just having our last holiday party, and we were the team. We took care of the Soccers back then and the goals. And so we rented out the sports arena to have our party, and it was like an hour and a half into the party. And her husband walks up to me and says, hey, I'm leaving. And I'm like, why are you leaving? Like, the party's just getting started. And he looks at me, he said, dude, I'm going to go home and get laid. And I was like, oh my, can you say that?
Is a pastor telling you
Yeah.
this?
And I'm like, wow, can you say that? Like, you're a pastor. And he's all, I'm married and I'm going home. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. Can we talk? Like, you're real. You're not somebody just reading verses and telling me how to behave. You're like a real person, and you have, flaws, which I didn't know at the time.
Sure.
But we would meet, and then he would read out of the Bible, and I said, I don't know which religion's right. It was kind of my get out of jail free card. How do you know the Muslims are wrong? Mm-hmm. How do you know the Jews are wrong? How do you know the Buddhists? And, hardcore Christians would just be like, I just know, and they would just, there was no gray area for them. So I met him, and we studied for a while every week. And finally I go, I'm a Christian. So he goes, well, you want to come to a service? So I went, and I got there early, and I walked in the church, and the band started warming up on a Dave Matthews song. And I was a Dave Matthews fan. And he was up on stage and he was talking about that he's got insecurities and, you know, he's a little guy. And the whole sermon was called The Anatomy of Christianity. And it was talking about if you ate cheeseburgers and all this fattening stuff, you'd clog your arteries, just like porn and greed and all these things would clog your spiritual arteries. And it was like he was talking to me. I'm in the medical field. You know, I went to Merritt College. I learned about all this stuff. So as he was telling it to me, it was like he was talking to me. And all of a sudden it just clicked. And the next day I heard that song, I Can Only Imagine. And I started choking up and tearing up. And I was like, wow, you've been here the whole time and I haven't been paying attention. Mm-hmm. So that's how I got back into God. And then Kelly was 110% supportive of that and worked as the lunch lady at Christian High. And I don't know if you want to get into like how I ended up at Christian, but that was my journey with God.
Was Kelly a Christian before or after you became a Christian?
I think she was always kind of leaning there, but she didn't have any of that in her background.
Yeah.
But she was just pure love. I mean, you guys have met her. She just is pure love.
Oh, yeah. She's awesome.
Yeah. She's always had God in her, but she really, I wouldn't say pushed, but she kind of led, you know, hey, we should go this Sunday. Like, forget going to scouting, forget going to film. We need to go to church. You know, we need to instill this in our kids. So she was very supportive of that.
How did that faith start to change who you were as a business person and as a business owner?
Well, I started having a different lens on, you know, I looked at every person, every employee, and including my time. Did I put that into God? Did I put that into helping? Did I do the donations? Did I, 8 years of coaching in the middle of my earning prime, I never felt more filled up than when I was with you guys. Never. And Kelly supported that, every step of the way. She didn't care that I worked all day and then went and coached and then went back and worked. She didn't care. She was supportive. And I go, how do you feel about me coaching? She's like, I love it. I love it. And I love seeing you on the field with the kids.
Yeah.
So that support just pushed me more into it.
What made you want to get into coaching?
So I had coached my kids early on in different sports. I coached Kyle in Pop Warner, which is my oldest son. And Aaron decided, which is another like a God thing, he got this thing called Spark Basketball. Mm-hmm. And he said, hey, I want to do this Spark thing. Well, I had no idea it was at Shadow Mountain. I was clueless. And I was like, oh, Spark over here. So I drive there for the signups. And I'm like, oh, this girl tried to get me to go to that church when I was younger, when I was working at Dixieline, but I had no desire, but it just brought back the memories that I went to an Easter Sunday service and watched Pastor Jeremiah speak. And so I showed up and they go, we need a coach. So I was like, do I have time? And Kelly's like, yes, you have time. Coach your son. And I was coaching. They were like 10 years old probably. And we were like 5-5. And I just kind of learned the game and how you had to play each kid a certain amount of time. So the next year, I ended up being like 6-4 going into the championship game against a team 10-0. And we won. And Beezer happened to be there.
Yeah.
And he walks up. He said, oh, man, that was great. You knocked off an undefeated team. I won't tell you the coach I was against. He's a pretty famous guy, and I was clueless. I never played basketball, but I knew how to motivate kids. I knew how to see things from my brain, like what they were doing, how to stop it, what my kids could do. And I said, I don't know anything about basketball. I can't coach high school basketball. I'm a football guy. And Beezer kind of laughed at me and said, you just knocked off like a high school basketball coach here. And it was little kids.
Yeah.
But they were undefeated. So we just ended that conversation. And 2 years later, I did it again. I knocked off my kids knocked off an undefeated team again. He goes, you're lying. You've been lying to me the whole time. I'm like, no, call Helix. So he called Helix. And they told him, no, he's a football guy. He never played basketball. So he goes, do you want to coach? And that's when I came home and said, hey, I got offered to coach here, and Brandy's a cheerleader. So like I said earlier, once I commit, I said, okay, I'll do it. I shook Beezer's hand, and Brandy decided not to cheer her senior year. So and then I was hooked.
Yeah.
You know, guys like you brought me in, and, you know, I maybe at another time I'll tell you the Grant Todd story, which really, unless you guys want me to, that's what broke my heart. You guys know Grant. It was our first year. He was a new kid to the school, and I just saw him. I mean, God showed him to me. He was standing on the sideline. He looked depressed. He looked, you know, I'm able to read body language. All these skills help me. And so I went up to him. I go, what's up? He goes, I'm lost. I don't know what I'm doing. I said, I don't know what I'm doing either. I said, why don't you come over here and I'll run you through some linebacker drills. And I ran him through, and he was strong. He was a beast. And I said, look, you're mine. You're a linebacker. Don't let any of these coaches try to steal you. You're mine. I didn't think anything about it. Nothing. My phone rings that night, and it's Beezer. And he said, hey, you know that kid you were with today, he was meeting with me to quit. And I said, well, I don't like people that quit. And he goes, you don't understand. You know, his mom's passing away. And I go, wow, that's heavy. And he goes, but guess what? He didn't quit. He said, I'm not quitting if you let me be with Coach Biggs. And I was like, wow. Like, I didn't know I made that impression today. And the part that chokes me up is the next day, his mom was waiting for me. And she said, hey, I prayed for you. And I go, what do you mean you prayed for me? She goes, I prayed for a man like you. I want to see my baby on the field, my two babies, because, you know, his brother was on the team as senior. And my baby wants to be in the stands with me before I pass away. And she started crying and gave me a big hug, and we both started crying. And as you know, Grant ended up, you know, his mom passed away his senior year, and he came to me and he said, if it wasn't for that, that distraction of being able to play football, I don't know if I would have made it. So I knew God put us together there, and then I was just hooked. I committed to 1 year. I ended up doing 8. But it was that moment with Grant and his mom that really solidified me.
And I think, and a lot of people will attest to this, that will probably hear this, who have been coached by you. I think the biggest impact that you have is the way that you coach players. You don't treat every single one the same, and your coaching style varies. Can you talk about why that is so important to you to coach the kid on the individual, and it can transcend football. It can be in business or family. I think you're a great mentor, and I think that is a big part of it. So can you tell me a little bit about the philosophy behind that?
Early on, I kind of learned that it was I had to adjust to my kids. You know, if they wanted to play video games, I had to learn video games, even though they would beat the heck out of me in Call of Duty. But it was my job to adjust to them. You know, I was kind of a Def Leppard, Van Halen, rocker kind of guy, and Kyle's showing up with country. A couple times, I'm like, we're not listening to that in my car. And finally it dawned on me, like, if I want to bond with my kids, I need to be into what they're into. And I learned it's like not your job to adjust to me. It's my job to adjust to you. And every one of you are motivated by something else. Zane, sometimes I had to get on you to get you mad and get you crazy, which happened a few times.
A couple times.
But then there's other guys that if you raised your voice, they would sink away and back away. So because of back to me having to be able to read somebody, I could read, oh, that didn't work with that kid. I need to adjust. This kid needs more love. He's a little more sensitive, you know, and you tell that kid good job every time. Zane, I had to get on you a couple times, but that's what you needed to get mad. Not that you weren't one of the best players and gave the best effort, but you wanted that. You wanted me to push you, and that I got more out of you by pushing you. So every kid is different. So you got to learn that kid to motivate them, what drives them. And if you go the other way, like, no, they need to adjust to me, you'll lose kids. And, there was a bunch of kids, Will Hale was going to leave, and a lot of other people were going to leave the team. And
Kai Arvan.
And they ended up with me, and we came to an agreement, and we came to, like, what is our goal? And to me, probably my biggest goal in coaching, even though we had amazing success. I mean, in my 7 years, we were in 4 championships and won 3, which was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
But the kids that were going to quit their junior year that stayed and even went down to JV ended up being starters on varsity on championship teams. They didn't quit. And I don't think we would have won those championships if the Grant Todds would have left, or the Will Hales and Jameer. All those guys were going to leave, and they ended up starting, whether it was center or guard or special teams. I just think that family that we created, us, I mean, I think that's why I'm here today, is because we're family.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's something that I think in your business as well, you're intentional about creating that culture. How's that been different for you? I mean, obviously we went to a Christian school and there's a different dynamic too, right? Like, you're a coach, we're players, what you say kind of goes. Obviously in that world, you've been in private equity groups with, guys from Harvard, guys that have big egos, guys that, and girls and people that are just maybe used to doing things a certain way. How do you create a culture where you've got a lot of people with a lot of real world experience to kind of fall in line?
Well, I think I had to learn, every day. And I'm an overthinker. I'll go home at night and replay things in my head. Like, how did I handle that? Like, I upset that person. What did I do wrong? And being humble enough to say, hey, I screwed up. I didn't know what I did. I apologize if I, hurt your feelings, or I didn't mean to come off that way. But I'm always working to get better every day in my marriage, with my kids, with you guys. I want to learn more because, maybe not to get too psychological on myself, but I was always looking for that with my dad. I mean, out of all the years I played football, he went to one of my games. Now, my stepdad never missed a single game, so you're always kind of looking for that connection. And so I work on that, every single day. But in business, people in my position were kissing up to the doctors and, oh, I want your business and I want that. And, any of us, you think about a doctor, they're up on a little bit higher of a pedestal like an athlete.
Yeah.
And one time I just got tired of a doc, and I said, dude, you just need to shut up. Like, you go to the bathroom the same way I do. And he just looked at me, he goes, I like you. And from then on, I was just myself around them. I wasn't kissing their rear end to get their business. Either they liked me or they didn't, and we built a relationship. And now, I'm 3 deep. I know the doc, I know the wife, I know the kids. I'm going to the kids' weddings, just like the blessing I got to go to Grant Todd's wedding.
Yeah.
It just happened to be the bye week. I also seen a couple other weddings in this room here.
Yeah.
But for me, when I started learning around all those doctors and being me and one other guy were the only 2 non-doctors that had shares in the surgery centers. And I got to be in all these meetings with all these docs and hear them like, they're flawed. They're just like the rest of us. So when the private equity group came in and wanted to invest in us, and I went through 3, different private equity groups that came in, showed us what they had. I learned from every single one of them. My big experience was after we closed, they took us out and we did like a workshop all day long, and then we did a dinner. And it was very unique for me because my partner, Mark, I know my weaknesses. He was a lawyer and a CPA, UCLA, SMU, worked at Procopio, Ernst and Young. Like, the guy's brilliant. My other partner is a chiro, and writes papers and's been published, and just a really good guy and's got a foundation. And the way the meeting started, they started with Mark. And they were like, hey, what'd you do? He's like, lawyer, CPA, Ernst and Young. And you could literally hear like an audible grunt. Yeah, one of us. And then Joe, he's a chiro. He's been published. Not as many, but yeah. He's a smart guy. And then one guy flew like sorties off the Midway. He was a jet pilot.
Oh, wow.
Went to Harvard, worked at Bain Capital. You could hear the grunts. Then a Wake Forest quarterback, Harvard, more grunts. Next guy's brilliant, probably the smartest guy in the room, went to great school. And, there's all these grunts, and then they get to me, and I'm like, Helix High School, class of 83. And they're like, you lie. We've been working with you all day. Like, I didn't say I was dumb. But no, and they literally said, you're a liar like 3 or 4 times. And I'm like, I'm not. And I'm like, it's just who I am. That's just my background. I've grown since then. I've learned street smarts. So it was a pretty unique moment for me to have them already have time with me to give me some credibility, versus I probably wouldn't have got the credibility if I'd have just stood up on day one and said that.
Did you ever feel insecure in rooms like that?
There's moments where I think I always have a little insecurity because I overthink things and I want to be liked. I care. So you always worry about that kind of things. And, we had a moment, I brought a big deal to the table. And I won't say the guy's name, but the guy's like, his pedigree's impeccable.
Yeah.
Impeccable. And we had this meeting, and then he came up to me afterwards. He's, 20 years older than me. And he looks at me and he goes, how'd I do? I kind of looked around like, are you asking me? And it made me realize we all have that. Like, that guy should not have been asking me that question, from my perspective. But from his perspective, he wanted to know, did I do good? Did I do a good job in this meeting? Did I screw up? Like, how was I? And I was like, wow, even, at 70-something years old, you're still looking to improve, and you're still asking people, how did I do?
Did you see yourself a lot in that guy in that moment?
Absolutely. I was like, oh, yeah, so it is okay when I feel this way. Like, this guy that's accomplished everything, probably worth $50 million, he's asking me, how did he do?
Yeah.
That was like an aha moment for me.
What, and we can cut this out. What's the most amount of money you've made in a year?
Well, the day the private equity came in, they wrote me a check for $3 million. But my first company, we were, like I said, grossing, 12, 13 million with a 9 million overhead. So there's 3 of us, divide that money up. Yeah. And then it was all taken away. Yeah. And I didn't have God at that time. So maybe that was my wake-up call.
Yeah. I mean, as you maybe go back and think about this, where was your confidence at making $1 to $3 million a year versus losing it? Did anything shake up for you?
I'd say I had a moment when I lost it, because that became my identity. Oh, man, look at you, Biggs. Used to be this medical assistant for these docs, and now you own one of the biggest PT companies in San Diego, and you're rented out Humphreys by the Bay and having a live band and walking up on stage and thanking the community, and, had a limousine, was in the first row of every concert. But I didn't have God at that time, so I still was generous. I still felt like middle class or below. I still do. I'm not going to buy the Ferrari or the Mercedes because, my dad still lives in a, trailer park in El Cajon, a senior living place. Like, we come from very humble. My grandfather never made more than like $9, owned his own home. Even when he passed away, had money in the bank. He came from Mexico. My grandma came from Spain, and he was an upholsterer. So I still have that mindset that, I'm still a middle-class guy. I mean, I live in La Mesa. You guys know where I live. You guys have hit balls at my house. But I don't live in North County. I don't want that kind of stuff. I feel like I just feel that's gluttony. Everyone can do what they want with it. They can afford it, but I just don't feel that. I'm not judging people that do have it, but I just don't need it.
So as you were building businesses, growing things, was money not the main motivation for you?
No, it was the competition. Anybody I ever met that was doing something for money felt dirty. And you knew they looked at you for money. They just knew, you could feel it. To me, I just wanted to do the right thing. And if you did the right thing and you treated people right, it came.
Yeah.
Every time. Just create the best product.
I feel like that delineation that you're talking about, especially in medical devices, it's probably something that you see a lot where you can look into a rep's eyes and see this guy actually cares about what he's selling to these doctors, or he's just trying to make a commission.
Absolutely. And I've been around people that would say, doc, I make more money if you buy this versus this. And the doc's just like looking at him like, dude, like that's a turnoff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One time I told the doc, I said, you don't need to buy this from me. You could buy it yourself and make money. And the guy was like, you get all my business. I've been sold to make other people money. So I just think it's important to try to be the best you can be. And if you do that, I think success will come. I think money will come. But if you're chasing the money, you're losing the focus, and people will feel it. They'll feel like, oh, this guy's just trying to make money versus this guy's trying to do the right thing.
Yeah. They say that money just reveals more of who you are. Is that something that was, as you've started to make more money, were there ever any like, I'm starting to feel a lean towards this? Maybe it opened up new things. I know some people, they never had really access to things within culture, art, things like that. Like as you got more money and more access to things, did that bring out any other things that maybe like, hey, I'd always wanted to maybe look into this?
Well, I always liked real estate. So when I had money, I started buying real estate. I look every day on Zillow. I look at areas. I've flipped about 18 properties now. Tore down a place down at Mission and rebuilt it and sold both units. And, I got ADD and dyslexia. When I was coaching you guys, I was the Don Joy distributor for San Diego for bracing. I had my PT company. I had an urgent care. I started a urine testing company because, I knew what would happen because of what happened, with my son. Once you take a Vicodin, you could become addicted. So we created this company so you could test and see how much was in people's system to see if they were overtaking it. So I had like 4 companies going on, and I was coaching high school football, and just the ADD and the Rain Man in me. I don't know if you guys know what Rain Man is?
Yeah.
It's
a good movie.
Yeah. I always say I'm that guy. I see the toothpicks, Maybe not the smartest guy, but I'll find toothpicks.
You better looking version too.
He said, I'll find toothpicks.
I will. I'll find toothpicks. But I really think it comes down to people, how they feel around you, how you make them feel, how they make you feel. So when you talk about when I have a little, extra money, I'm going to Post Malone on Sunday night.
Okay.
But I'm excited that I'm taking these people with me. I'm excited that I'm taking my brother Eddie. I'm taking a guy who's a friend and a client. I'm taking another client. But I'm about to meet and hang out with these people. I'm not going to say I'm the hugest Post Malone fan, but I want to hang out with these people and I want to have a good time. And I love sharing, whether it's taking Zane up to Big Bear and skiing and having him yell at my wife.
You know what, man? I knew you were going to say this.
Zane was yelling at your sweet wife?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We won't get into that.
Yeah, he was young then. Yeah, he was young.
I was young, didn't make good decisions,
It was like, you just do it like this and go down the hill and listen to me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Listen, dude, we all make
It's
mistakes.
crazy.
Yeah. Well, you knew it was going to come up, right?
I know.
Yeah.
I was prepping myself.
Yeah, it actually came up 2 days ago. I went to the range with my wife, and she's like, "You did really good coaching."
Oh no.
And I go, "Not like Zane."
It's a running joke at this point.
It is.
I'm sure Kelly's forgiven me. By
Oh,
now.
she loves you and always has.
Yeah.
Even then, she just thought you were a hard coach.
I'm sure my kids will listen to this that I coach now and be like,
they're going to say he's totally different now.
No, they won't say that.
Zane gets fired up.
Yeah. I get fired up.
Zane gets fired up.
I think the real question here is, and you mentioned Post Malone.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like you're that much of a, classic rock guy anymore. I know that you listen to a ton of Jason Aldean.
I do.
Who is your go-to country artist now?
I'm going to still say Aldean, but I've seen Morgan Wallen like 3 times now.
Okay.
But I am going to see Jason up in Irvine in a couple months. But Morgan's been really good. I like Morgan Wallen. But I still went to Def Leppard this last year.
Ah, there it is.
I just went to Bryan Adams and Joan Jett and the Blackheart. So, I mean, I still like my rock, but I like my country too.
Yeah.
We got to get him into like some R&B stuff now.
Hey, listen, he's adapted.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just like in his coaching style, he's adapted.
Yeah. So listen, your goals and I think your vision probably from 10, 15, 30 years ago to where they are now are a lot different. As you're kind of looking here over the next, 10, 20 years of your career, what are things now that maybe you're starting to prioritize?
So I know this is morbid, but you think the average male is 78 years old in America.
Yeah.
What do I got? 19 summers left? How do I want to spend them?
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't think about any of this stuff at your age, and I don't want to be morbid, but I want to be real.
Yeah.
That I got 19 summers left. How do I want to spend them? With my wife? I want to spend them with my kids, my grandkids, and I want to go back and coach. And so I need to free up time. And, in my industry, when you get private equity backed, they like to hold about 5 years. So I'm in year number 5, and, hopefully we'll exit sometime, next year, and it'll be a big payday, and I'll stay on, in whatever role I need to make sure the company thrives. But, I'd already started planning this 5 years ago with my partners. We actually sold our company to our employees.
Little ESOP.
So Spine and Sport is an ESOP. It's employee owned. And then we have stock and warrant options that as, we sell and we make money, it pays off those warrants. And then the employees basically own the company. Mm. So we wanted to do that for the staff. And my right-hand person at work is a girl named Nina. And I'm handing the baton to her and basically saying, you do this, you do that, you take this, you go to this meeting, because I'm getting her ready to take my spot. And I just want to play more of a utility role. And I want to go back and coach again.
I got the perfect place for you to come coach. So just know that.
I'm sure I'll be underneath you.
I don't know about all that.
Yeah.
I still got a lot to learn.
Nah, you've done a great job. And, like I said, I'm golfing with Briggs today after this. And he speaks very highly of you, and so does everybody else.
I appreciate that.
So, I mean, obviously they always say you got to start with the end in mind, right?
Yeah.
With that perspective that you're just sharing with us right now, if we were to have a conversation about Mike Biggs 20, 50, 100 years from now, what's one word that you would want people to associate with you?
That he made me feel good. That I knew he cared. I know that's more than one word, but in that area, like I think you guys know that I care about you. Mm-hmm. And I think we'll go back to country. Tim McGraw's got a song right now, Standing Room Only. Have you heard it? Mm-mm. Check it out. It's one of his new songs. He talks about how at his funeral, how long is the procession? Is there going to be standing room only? Don't judge me by my possessions. So that's the way I feel. Like, I don't want to be judged by my possessions. I want to be, how many people are at my funeral? How many people are standing there saying I made an impact in their lives? But that's how I want to be judged.
Yeah. Well, you got a long ways to get there. Yeah. I mean, 78. I'm taking the over on that.
That's the new 60 for Biggs. Come on. I mean,
look at the guy.
Well,
like he takes care of himself. I mean, what else do you expect from that guy?
Kelly takes care of me.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, there's a lot of things she brings home that I would have normally not eaten before. But I've learned to love it.
Yeah, a little more
Eat
color.
this, you'll be healthy.
Yeah, a little more color.
It tastes like cardboard.
Oh man.
Yeah.
They say you develop a taste for it, dude. I don't know about that stuff. I think it's just
or a little extra sauce on it. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you defeat the purpose because you're throwing the calories right back on it.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Coach, it was a pleasure having you on. We appreciate your time. This has been a phenomenal episode. You've said a lot of impactful things. And if you'd like to hear more content like this, give us a follow at The Confidence Quotient, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. We'll be on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well. Coach, appreciate your time.
Thanks for the trust in having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
I'm so proud of you guys.
Yeah.
What you're doing and the commitment you guys have, not just here, but in the other things in your life and the way you've touched other people. I know you've both coached and impacted kids. And you've stayed true to your backgrounds too, as far as God and Christian values. So I respect that. Amen.
Got good role models.
Oh, you got a linebacker coach like this guy.
Come on now. He could probably rip you up right now, dog.
Bro, I would. No. He'd serve me up for dinner, bro. He'd dice me up. I'd be in the nightly tacos, bro. Call it Tuesday.
Hello.
I'll be a Saint Bernard. I'll just lick all you guys. Love you up.
Ain't that the truth?
The man. Appreciate you, brother.
All right. Appreciate you.